So roughly 6 months ago, I set out to buy or build a time trial and triathlon bike with the view to trying to do it as cheaply as I could, but to get a decent spec bike. And that led me to buying a crash damaged Canyon Speedmax. That is this bike. It was yellow back then, it had a crack in the left chainstay, it had been crashed. I got it at a great price and I thought, right, this is my opportunity to be the cycling equivalent of Matt Armstrong. Now, turns out it's not very easy to work on carbon fiber yourself, and to be honest, I just didn't trust myself. With something like this, if it fails, like, I'm going to be in a bad way, aren't I? So I knew I had to take it to somewhere that were going to be able to tell me if it was repairable or not, and then to also carry out the repair. So I took it down to CBT in Derby. I'll leave their links down below. They've done a brilliant job. They've done the repair and they've done the paint and the logos and everything, and I absolutely love this. I'm a big fan of blue bikes. Of course, the main issue was fixing the frame, and they weren't fussed about it at all. It was almost like it was not even a bad crash or bad level of damage. They fixed it no problem, got the bike painted up, and I absolutely love it. It's actually a Peugeot colour, this blue, and the reason I like having bikes painted in car colours is when I chip them, which will happen, you just get a touch-up pen from Peugeot in this case, and hopefully make it look not as rough if you do accidentally drop it or chip it and so on. But hopefully it stays smart for a while. But yeah, I like that. It's a really metallic-y colour, and I'm a big fan of morale. I think when you're performing or trying to perform, if your morale is good, you'll perform better. And this is a small thing, but looking down and seeing a bright blue bike that I love, I'm hoping will improve my morale and hopefully improve performance. So that's the thought behind that. Now, the bike itself is a size large, and I've put a few bits on it. Some of the things are from factory and some of the things aren't. So where shall I start? Let's start with the Groupset. So I wanted to go to SRAM AXS because of the gear range available. As I said, the main events that I think I'm going to be riding this bike on this year are Ironman UK and Ironman Wales, both really hilly, and I'm not a climber. Therefore, I needed a big range of gears. So 12 speed, 2x means I can get a really low first gear, but still have quite a high top end. I'm actually running a 46-33 chain set. I might go slightly bigger for those races, but the reason I've got this is because it was super cheap, and I just think, well, for training, that's absolutely fine. 46-10 is still like 31 miles an hour at 85 RPM, so I don't need to worry about the top gear. It's absolutely fine for me. And a 1036 cassette, so big range, which will hopefully get me up lots of big hills. I am going to swap the jockey wheels out for some NRG ceramic bearing jockey wheels, and I already have an NRG wax chain on it, so I do look for those optimizations where I can. And I actually think, like, chain line efficiency wise, I think I'll be in the big ring more and further down the block more, and I actually think this, for the average speed I think I'll be riding, this would be a good choice. Sure, if you're a monster you can put a dinner plate chainring on, but I just don't think that is right for me at the minute. Shifting wise, because it's fully wireless, gives you the option to put shifters wherever you'd like. So on the base bar I have 2 SRAM clicks underneath some heat shrink tubing, and then I've actually got the Zip SRAM extensions, so these have shifters built in. I picked these up on eBay for not a huge amount of money, which I'm really happy with. Built-in Garmin mount, and like I say, built-in shifters, so that as a package works really well. Now, putting this package together, I've built bikes before, and sometimes it's enjoyable, sometimes it's not. This was a bit more complicated, hydraulic disc brakes, time trial bars. It was just a bit like, I was a bit intimidated by it, and I didn't want to not enjoy it, so I took it down to Rich Steels at Detail Bike Tech, and he built this up in absolutely no time, really, to say how busy he is. I'm really happy with it, and I think it will be a blessing to be able to go out for a bike ride and not have to carry a multi-tool for the first 5 rides and tighten things up that I haven't quite torqued up correctly. So thanks to Rich for putting this bike together. To finish off the Groupset, the brakes, I've got a 160mm rotor on the front and a 140 on the rear, just because that was what was on the wheel, to be honest. I would prefer a 160 so that I can swap wheels around without having to swap a rotor, but it's what it's got on, and to be honest, I don't think I'll be swapping these wheels out anyway. On to the wheel set then. So these are the Veta Lisio Ultra 58, so 58mm deep. They're about 30mm wide, so nice and wide wheels. They're super light, about 1300 grams. For the events I'm doing right now, light is better than super aero. I did used to like running a front tri-spoke, but Veta don't currently make a tri-spoke, and I do think actually now I've put these on, it does look quite cool with a normal front wheel, so I will stick with that for the time being, and I just know that it works well. I've paired those at the minute with some Hutchinson Blackbird race tyres, just because that's what Veta gave me on the wheels, and I'm going to test them and see how they are. I've never used Hutchinson tyres before. I've had mixed reviews from people who have asked. They're 30mm, and the frame will take 30mm tyres, so I just think I'm going to give them a go for the next month or two and see what I think. And they're set up tubeless. On the rear end, I've paired this with the EasyDisc SL, so it's the super light disc wheel cover. We know the benefits of a disc wheel. This is wind tunnel proven. I've been to this wind tunnel and seen this tested against high-end disc wheels, and there's basically no difference. So I really like the fact that it is a more accessible price point, but you're still going to get those gains. And I'm still bearing in mind, you know, how heavy the overall package is. Like, sure, I could buy a top tier disc wheel that's probably a little bit lighter than that combination, but this is actually very competitive and for, you know, nowhere near the price. The cockpit was something that was more broken than I thought it was. So when I took the bike to Detail Bike Tech, he, you know, took it to bits and had a look at the parts to check that nothing else was broken. And the base bar was actually cracked. So where the stem clamps onto the base bar, there was a big crack underneath it. I did a bit of Googling, and it turns out this is quite a common occurrence for those Canyon carbon base bars, and they don't actually sell them anymore. So when I was looking to replace them, I was like, oh, what do I go for? I ended up going for just the Zip aluminium base bar, and there's a lot of reasons for that. I like the fact it's aluminium, and therefore if I'm tightening the stem up, I don't really have to be too worried about over torquing it. I know you should still use the correct torque, but you don't have to be as concerned. And I like the fact that this is very adjustable out of the box. So these extensions clamp onto the base bar. It's, you know, round in the middle, so I can loosen them and adjust the angle of the armrests and extensions without having to buy expensive spacers. I can take these spacers out and raise and lower the height. The length of these extensions into the standard Canyon sort of sleeve at the bottom means the extensions are quite long, and I do have quite long arms, so that means that actually I've got the right length for once on an extension. Normally I'm sort of like, the extension's halfway down my hand, so I really like that, and I think that's a real good like budget offering. Sure, like aerodynamics wise, it'd be nicer to have a real deep, thin carbon base bar, but I just don't think that will make a meaningful impact on my performance, whereas being able to adjust a position to one I'm comfortable in without breaking the bank will make a good impact on my performance. Frame storage wise, now this bike does come with a top 2 box in already, which is good for nutrition. I did buy the official Canyon Fidlock down 2 bottle. Not sure if I'm going to get on with that. I fiddled around with it a bit and it feels a bit fiddly. Not sure how it will be in the heat of the moment. And then I did get a 3D printed storage tube box there as well. Canyon actually put those files up on the website, so all you've got to do is find somebody to print you the storage box. This one is, you know, it looks absolutely fine. I've not tested it yet, but you can't get it out without taking the bottle off. I think that's actually quite good, because if the lid does rattle loose, it's not going to come off without you taking the bottle off, so you're not going to lose your spares. I think that's a good little safety thing. Saddle is the Pro Aero Fuel. It's not my favourite saddle, if I'm honest. I haven't really found a favourite time trial saddle, but this seems to be one that I can get along with. I've also just put a behind the saddle bottle mount there. I do have a BTA mount coming for up the front, but I do like having one behind me because it's sort of out of the way and I can sort of move my head around and not worry about a bottle in my face. And that, in a nutshell, is my new time trial and triathlon bike. I'm going to head out on it tonight and get some miles in and see how it goes and get out on it in an event very soon.